this one. This is the one that we've got to go through. This is another big one here, right? Because this is what I was talking about with respect of the AT&T stuff, and obviously the state turning around and saying the time advancement reports. So here we're going to go through this doc, and just to clarify what is actually happening in this doc. What you've got is you've got Brian Kohberger being said that he, or the state saying Brian Kohberger took this specific route from point A to point B, done this crime, and they're telling you that he went on this route, and they're saying that along this route there was 2 instances, I think, where they caught what they believe is a white Hyundai Elantra on different cameras to try and use them as pinpoints between these 2 places. So they're saying he went from here to here. So if I do it really small, I could actually just come up on the screen for a minute, can I? Shall I do that? Before we just go and annihilate everything they've said, which I told you was coming. I said that this was coming. So he's going from point A to point B, committing the crime, apparently, and along that, he's caught on 2 cameras, apparently, so they're using that to, Sahara comes out and says, that's all well and good, but the evidence that you've provided don't back that up. You need time advance reports. And if you get the time advance reports, they will help you to nail Brian Kohberger. But I'm here telling you that the information that you have at the moment could potentially be exculpatory because you're missing information. They don't argue with Sahara. They had their chance to cross-examine him. They said nothing. Didn't do a thing. Dre Latina, thank you very much, Doc. Thank you very much. Still doing deep dives. We are. And thank you very much for coming by and saying hi. It's good to see you. I hope you are well. And what did I say? Because they're now come out, the prosecution comes out and they say they can't mention time advance reports. We don't want them to be mentioned because they didn't exist. But they were quite clever in how they did it. And we're now going to see that being absolutely annihilated and proven that they're either hiding it. And again, I said, I do a video and tell you guys things. I'll get called a prick by a lot of people. But then I'll see a doc like this. And if you've been around the channels and actually listened to my videos, you are now about to have come to fruition every single thing that I said. Here we go. Check this out. So comes now Brian C. Kohberger buying through his attorneys of record and hereby respectfully objects to the state's motion in limine to exclude reference to unproduced AT&T timing advance records, TA. Mr. Kohberger's objection is grounded in his rights under the United States Constitution, yada, yada, yada. You know what we're going with that. The state's motion seeks to prevent Mr. Kohberger from confronting, through a full and fair cross-examination, a portion of the case. The state seeks Mr. Kohberger's silence on records produced by AT&T, timing advance records. So they're basically saying, we don't want Brian Kohberger to come into this court and mention time advance reports. Even though Sahara had said, if you get the time advance reports, they will perhaps they'll bring them up. Oh, can I show the doc? Sorry. Yeah, I'll bring the doc up. I'll bring the doc up, my friend. I'll bring the doc up. I thought I had it up. There we go. There's the doc. So here we go. Oh, what am I doing? Got rid of it again. So here we go, right? Thank you for reminding. It's a good job I'm looking at that, isn't it? Good job I'm looking at. So the state's motion seeks to prevent Mr. Kohberger from confronting through full and fair cross-examination proportion of the case, right? The state seeks Mr. Kohberger's silence on records produced by AT&T time advance records. The state's motion informs the court TA records were not produced by AT&T Global Legal Demand Center. So this is their little, how can I say, a bit of a Kansas City shuffle, really, where they're saying they're not produced by the Global Legal Demand Center and trying to make that look like they don't produce them. They're being quite funny. So they're saying Brian Kohberger can't mention them because they don't produce them. But they don't just flat out say they don't produce them. They go through Global Legal Demand Center. And that's where people don't really listen. They just hear, oh, they don't produce them, they don't have them, so you can't have them. So there we go. Until May of 2023. Mr. Koberger agrees with that claim. Agrees with it. So you think, well, he agrees with it. However, that is only partial information. The state is misleading the court in its motion by what it leaves out. What the state is not saying is that the TA records existed at AT&T in November and December 2022. In fact, they existed much earlier than that. But around the time of the crime, they existed. The state has to know this to be true because in April of 2024, the state produced the actual records from AT&T for cell towers and individual TA records for 2 of the 4 deceased and 1 for a person who had been a person of interest at the beginning of the investigation, as well as over 3,800 people on the cell tower. These records were from November of 2022 and were produced in discovery to Mr. Koberger in 2024. It is accurate that AT&T, Global Legal Demand Center, GLDC, did not produce TA reports to law enforcement in 2022. The TA reports from AT&T GLDC were not available to state and local law enforcement until June of 2023. However, the existence of these reports in this case is direct evidence that these records could be and were provided to law enforcement by AT&T prior to production through GLDC. As such, Mr. Koberger's AT&T TA report from 2022 would not have been provided through AT&T's GLDC. AT&T had TA reports prior to their availability through GLDC. The state attempting to say the reports were not available until GLDC produced them is nothing more than asking the court for permission to hide the state's failure to disclose Mr. Koberger's AT&T TA report. Depending on how far back the report goes, it will contain exculpatory evidence that will partially, corroborate Mr. Koberger's alibi. Mr. Koberger will provide evidence, testimony, and argument in support of this claim that the state misrepresents the availability of TA records. Are you ready? Background. Mr. Koberger's TA records are different than other records provided in discovery. The records are location data that are accurate in determining the location of a cell phone. TA. TA is a term used in the cellular network industry relating to a measurement of time. It measures the time it takes for a radio frequency signal to travel between a mobile device and a base station in a cellular network. TA is required in cellular networks to assign a time slot to a mobile device, allowing it to transmit data so that it doesn't interfere with other devices. Given the signal is traveling at a known speed, the speed of light, and it tells you what that is, it is possible to use timing information to determine the distance of the mobile device from the base station. These measurements can be very accurate. When a mobile device is using multiple cell sites, it is possible to utilize trilateration to determine a very specific location, typically ranging in meters. Essentially, TA records provide a much greater detail of accuracy than regular cell site location information, only providing cell site and cell sector information. When analyzing a pattern of life associated with a mobile device, TA can provide accuracy in such detail it is possible to pinpoint precise travel routes, stagnation, and anomalies within a pattern of life. Law enforcement commonly relies on TA reports for this purpose. In other words, law enforcement are using Siray's technology and time advance reports in order to put people away for the crimes they have committed, and they are fucking happy to do so. And I bet my bollocks to a barn dance that if Siray had swooped in here and had gone through all of the stuff that he went through and said Brian Kohberger's guilty and I can prove it, everyone would have been sucking Siray off. Do you know what I mean? He'd have been Mr. Popular. He would have been the king of the guilters. They'd have been putting him up on a pedestal. They'd have probably had posters of him above their beds and probably stroking it before they went to sleep. But because he's come along and said, hold on, mate, I don't think Brian Kohberger's guilty, and I think that I can prove that he weren't there. And guess what? I'm going to do it for free. And now they hate him, mate. Now they hate him. So there we go. Right, so carry on. So pattern of life. So they can look at this phone. What does it normally do? What's it normally do? In the months, weeks, months leading up to this crime, what was this phone's pattern of behaviour? And then was this specific night an anomaly? Was what Brian was doing, did that stick out? Or was it no different than any other fucking night? Do you know what I mean? That's, again, important. And when people are talking about Brian Kohberger and saying, oh, he was stargazing that night, what a stupid fucking thing to say. No, it's about learning patterns of behaviour. Showing patterns of behaviour and then backing them patterns of behaviour up with the cell phone data that says, there you go. But let's just go on here. So TA records provide when analyse a pattern of life. Here we go. Law enforcement commonly relies on TA records for this purpose. The methodology and accuracy is supported for established, published, and accepted scientific practices. AT&T was the last of the major providers in the United States to produce TA data for law enforcement. The first TA reports AT&T provided to law enforcement were the result of a software program utilized by AT&T from a third party. VAV Solutions, or VAV Solutions, offered a software solution known as Arizo GEO. In using the Arizo GEO software, I'm just going to call that Geo because I love that word. Reminds me of Neo, which is from that. What's that called? The Matrix. Were they good films? I still can't work them out. AT&T was able to create and produce TA records for law enforcement, but due to the pricing of the software, it was at great expense. As a result, only certain law enforcement agencies were provided access to those reports. The FBI has been the primary agency given access, which is exactly what I said. That the FBI are going to be the people. And do you know what? What's even more fucking frustrating, right? That you've got the people who we're going to call them the guilters, right? They could have just gone on to Google and done some of their own research and learned that the state lied. When they said the time advance reports didn't exist, you could have found out that they'd lied about it. And you've got to ask your question, why are you lying? Why you lie? Why you lie? Thank you very much for gifting some more memberships. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you, Jane. Thank you. But let's go. Where are we? So great expense. So the FBI has it. The TA reports were not common, nor were they created in the normal AT&T ecosystem. Thus, TA reports were not accessible to the GLDC personnel within AT&T. The FBI utilised a different legal compliance unit within AT&T to access these TA records. That legal compliance unit is separate from GLDC. When these reports were first made available to the FBI, it was draped in secrecy. As a result, there is little documentation to rely on when dealing with early AT&T TA reports made available to the FBI. AT&T developed a new system outside of GeoSystem to produce these records at a fraction of the cost. This cost reduction allowed AT&T to provide these records to state and local law enforcement. As a result, GLDC was then given access to TA reports in May of 2023 and began providing them to state and local law enforcement in June of 2023. The distinction is that AT&T TA records were available to only select law enforcement, specifically the FBI, well before this internal change. Just making sure the fan is on the camera, because we've been going for about an hour, haven't we? 45 minutes. That camera, if you don't have like an external fan connected to it, it overheats. Good old Sony. So where are we? So well before this internal change. So Mr. Koberg is aware of the fact that AT&T GLDC did not produce TA reports in 2022. There is no doubt any representative from AT&T GLDC will testify to this fact. Mr. Koberger does not contest this claim. The state is also aware of this, as they did not obtain the current AT&T TA records in their possession through the AT&T GLDC. They had to utilise the FBI, who went through a different legal compliance unit within AT&T to obtain those records. At the onset of this investigation, detectives with the Moscow Police Department began a moderated turn on slow mode. Yeah, this is getting a bit hectic, and I didn't even know you could do that. Began obtaining call detail records as part of the investigation. In doing so, they heavily relied on assistance from Special Agent Nick Balance with FBI CAST. This is the first documented in emails exchanged on November 5th, 2022. Detectives Lawrence Mowry and Brett Payne were tasked with writing search warrants to AT&T for a number of different requests. On November 15th, 2022, Detective Mowry requested verbiage via email from SA Balance in reference to AT&T records. An email string that was produced by the state in discovery contains a very clear account of SA Balance's knowledge of AT&T TA being available. So again, the state are being caught in a lie. You've got to understand that. If you're a guilter, this is the first. Well, it's not the fucking first, but this is telling you. This is telling you the state are lying. They are lying to you. SA Balancer's email to Detective Mowry states, subject, atttower.dump.pdf. Nelos became a location database of record or lock DBOR a while back. List that and timing advance since both are applicable with them now. Nick Balance. In reviewing this email, there is no doubt the email is in reference to AT&T as it is referenced in the subject line. And this is the important bit, this Nelos name, because this is a variance of time data, the time advanced data. And reviewing the email, there's no doubt the email is in reference because in the subject line. Additionally, there is an attachment with the email chain that contains the words warrant ATT. Detective Mowry then forwarded SA Balancer's email to prosecutor Ashley Jennings. Objection to state's MIL AT Records Exhibit 1 email chain. So they reference and where that can be found. Detective Mowry was informing prosecutor Jennings of the availability of AT&T TA reports and requesting it be added to the warrant. In reviewing the AT&T search warrants that were produced over the next few days after this email chain, all of them contain specific verbiage requesting AT&T TA reports, just as recommended by SA Balance. While the above reference email chain is clear as to the existence, availability, and knowledge of availability to the state regarding AT&T TA reports in November of 2022, in July of 2024, this is where you need to pay close attention, Mr. Koberger received from the state AT&T TA reports from 2022 in reference to this investigation. These TA reports were not for his phone. These TA reports were not for his phone. The state turned over 3 separate AT&T TA reports. All 3 reports contain AT&T TA just skipping that, data from November of 2022. In the early phases of this investigation, law enforcement identified 3 AT&T phones of interest. 2 belong to deceased, and the third phone belongs to a person of interest whom law enforcement was investigating as a suspect. So did you hear that? Are you hearing that? So they're sending him phone data. It's not even for his fucking phone. They're for other people. And I can't make this shit up. Detective Mary authored an affidavit in support of a search warrant to AT&T issued on November 16th, 2022, that demanded the AT&T TA records for these phones. All 3 TA reports were produced by AT&T and are currently in the state's possession. The TA report the state disclosed on other phones is what Mr. Koberger was sought, relating to his own phone record. He requested the report through discovery and during a motion to compel. Mr. Koberger is aware and will provide testimony in support that the AT&T timing reports currently in the state's possession were not provided by the state by AT&T GDLC, sorry. The reports were produced through another compliance unit within AT&T through the FBI's close relationship with AT&T. Mr. Koberger posits that relying on GLDC stating that they did not provide TA reports in 2022 misses the issue at hand. Throughout the discovery process, the state has provided different explanations about TA report availability, but always claiming it was not in their possession. The state obtained search warrants in December of 2022, where the state saw AT&T TA reports for Mr. Koberger from November of 2022. The search warrant for Mr. Koberger's phone data contains identical verbiage as was used requesting TA reports in warrants issued for the other AT&T phones in November of 2022. The same processes of serving the warrant was also followed. Moscow Police Department obtained the warrant, provided it to the FBI SA Nick Balance, who then provided it to AT&T. The exact same process which resulted in TA reports being produced in November was repeated in December. Objection, blah, blah, blah. That's just saying where referencing it. The second AT&T warrant contained a document titled AT&T Mobile Carrier Request Form instructing AT&T to provide TA records for the past 7 days as available. Objection to state blah, blah, blah. Mr. Koberger has sought TA records related to his own phone and litigated the issue. Thank you very much. Yik Yak is the app you use while your roommates gets whacked. Yik Yak. During the course of litigation, the lead detective testified he had seen Mr. Koberger's timing advance records. Mr. Koberger has documents produced with search warrants that instruct AT&T to provide timing advance data. Discovery documents contain emails about including that request in search warrants because it was available. Mr. Koberger provides those documents as exhibits. So the conclusion here, and this is where people need to pin their ear back, especially if you think Brian Koberger's guilty. Mr. Koberger has a right to confront evidence in the case against him. His constitutional protections means he must be afforded a full and fair opportunity to cross-examine state's witnesses. AT&T TA reports are available. The state has produced reports that were prepared before GLDC produced them for law enforcement. TA reports relating to him exist, yet the state has not produced them. The state now seeks to limit his cross-examination and their lack of disclosure by hiding behind half-truths. Mr. Koberger must be allowed to explore the state withholding the evidence. Withholding evidence. And there you go, my honour. There you go, Your Honour. What do you say to that? What do you say to that? Withholding evidence. Exculpatory evidence.